Last week on Legally Kidnapped.
Good evening. Our top story this week, President Obama proves that he doesn't give a hoot about real mothers by proclaiming May as National Foster Care Month. In Illinois this week, Catholic Charities threatens to cut adoption and foster care services if they are forced to give your children to gay couples. And Representative Pete Stark from California introduces a bill to the House that would ban discrimination against gay couples in adoption proceedings. In Florida this week, the 10-year-old twin girl who was murdered at the hands of her adoptive father gets a street named after her. Meanwhile, the state is having a difficult time tracking its child welfare contractors, and DCF is now using Twitter to advertise your kids for adoption, which can now be done in bulk. In Michigan this week, the standoff mom who refused to drug her daughter gets her kid back, and in order to prevent any more such reunifications, Michigan approves a new bill to speed up the adoption process. The new law in Minnesota would give parents whose rights have been terminated to their kids a second chance. The Nebraska Supreme Court decides that a 3-year-old girl should be raised by her foster parents instead of going to live with her biological siblings in another adoptive placement. A new study from the Arizona State University suggests that the public favors equal custody of children in divorce cases, and mothers in New Jersey don't think that the state's child custody system is fair. In Oregon, a new bill passes the House which would impose a fine for filing a false child abuse report to the hotline. The USA is warning schools against checking the immigration status of students. Researchers are now saying that fractures once believed to be child abuse may actually be a metabolic bone disease in infants. And the New York State Court of Appeals says that a convicted sex offender is not a threat to his children. Kids are being both targeted and recruited in the Mexican drug wars, and the Russians are now encouraged to rat out their friends and neighbors to the child protective industry as well as the KGB. In Australia this week, the child protective industry cuts off a child welfare contractor after its CEO gets busted with child porn, and social workers are scared of being prosecuted in failure to protect cases. In Canada, the people of Ontario want the Ombudsman to have more oversight powers of the child protective industry. A 16-year-old kid who went missing from her foster home in Manitoba is found in British Columbia, and her 32-year-old former teacher is being charged with sexual exploitation. A former child protective worker gets 27 months for possession of child porn. And a former child welfare official from Saskatchewan calls the child protective industry a, quote, controlling and bullying bureaucracy, end quote, in a scathing report he wrote after being fired from his position. In England this week, the child protective industry is suffering from a desperate shortage of child snatchers. The police come looking for a horse jockey who hightailed it to Ireland after getting word that British social workers have laid claim to her unborn child, and the Kent County Council allows a convicted pedophile to be a foster parent. In entertainment news this week, Brooke and Charlie finalized their divorce. Police launch an abuse investigation into Nicolas Cage's drunk driving arrest. Oksana drops her domestic violence claim against Mel. Authorities claim that there was never any evidence to suggest that Michael Jackson was a pedophile. And Jesse James, Mrs. Sandra Bullock's adopted son. In Arkansas, the father of a 5-year-old boy who died in foster care is suing DHS for $2 million in a wrongful death claim. Facebook is being sued for allowing kids to like products without their parents' permission. And a foster family from Washington wins a $470,000 settlement from the child protective industry after placing a foster child in their home who repeatedly sexually assaulted their 9-year-old daughter in 2006. In California, a 20-year-old is arrested for stabbing his former foster father. In Colorado, a man is sentenced to 119 years in jail for the horrific beatings of his adopted son. A judge in Kentucky is accused of improperly jailing a teenager. A foster father from Louisiana is charged with second-degree murder for killing a 3-year-old in his care. A foster father from Minnesota gets 12 years for sexually abusing 2 boys in his care. A CPS supervisor from New York wants her homicide charges dropped in a failure to protect case where a 5-year-old starved to death. A woman from Ohio pleads guilty to killing a 20-month-old foster child in her care. A judge in Oklahoma denies bail to a cop who is accused of molesting his foster son. And another famed ex-cop from Pennsylvania is arrested and accused of sexually abusing 4 boys who he adopted between 1996 and 2009. A father is blaming DCF for not protecting his son who was nearly beaten to death by the mother's new boyfriend. Georgia police are searching for a real father who rescued his kids from foster care and hightailed it during a visit. In Indiana, a 4-year-old foster child is found wandering the streets twice now. And finally, tonight, a mother and grandmother are arrested for trying to protect the kids from CPS by getting into a physical altercation with a social worker. For these stories and all the latest dirt on the child protective industry, visit www.legallykidnapped.com. And until next week, this is Baby LK, over and out.